Today, we are starting with something that, honestly, on paper, looks like the cure for insomnia.
It really does.
It's called Schedule H. It sounds like the most boring bureaucratic exercise imaginable. But here is where it gets really interesting for you listening. This isn't just paperwork.
No, not at all.
We are looking at a massive university-wide undertaking happening right now at Dalhousie University. And when I say massive, I mean they are putting every single academic program under a microscope all at the same time.
It is a comprehensive institution-wide review, and the timing here is absolutely critical to understand the pressure they're under.
Right.
We are looking at these sources in late February 2026. The process is in full swing right now, and there is a very hard deadline looming in October of this year.
And the stakes. They aren't just, let's make the university a little bit better or let's update a syllabus here and there. There is actual cash on the table.
A lot of it.
A huge amount.
Exactly. There is $6.2 million in provincial funding involved here.
Wow.
And the government is using a very specific term for it in the documents. They call it a holdback.
A holdback. That is such a polite Canadian way of saying we have your money and you are not getting it until you do exactly what we say.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. This review is the key to unlocking that $6.2 million. If the university doesn't complete the Schedule H process to the province's satisfaction,
the money stays with the government.
Exactly. So the mission for our deep dive today is to figure out what Schedule H actually is. Is this a government takeover of the classroom?
Or is it a budget cut in disguise?
Right. Or is it, as the administration suggests, a genuine opportunity to fix what's broken?
So let's just dive right in. What exactly is Schedule H?
The province has put this requirement in place to ensure, and I'm quoting the official line here, greater accountability for public funding.
Accountability?
Yes. They want to know that the programs being offered are relevant, sustainable, and healthy.
But hold on a second. Don't universities do this anyway? I feel like I always hear about program reviews or accreditation cycles. It seems like universities are constantly reviewing themselves. Why is Schedule H any different?
You're right, they do. Those are usually called cyclical reviews.
Right, like the standard checkup every few years.
Exactly. Typically, a department gets reviewed every 5 to 7 years. It's a rolling process.
So 1 year, the history department gets reviewed, and then 2 years later, it's biology.
Exactly. It happens in pockets. But Schedule H is fundamentally different because it is distinct from those regular reviews.
How so?
Well, it builds on the same data, but it's taking a much broader, evidence-informed view of the entire program portfolio all at once.
So instead of checking the engine 1 year and the tires the next, they are stripping the whole car down to the chassis right now, all at the same time.
That's a really fair analogy. And it's important to note right off the top, this isn't just Dalhousie being singled out.
Right, I was going to ask that.
Yeah, this is a requirement for all Nova Scotia University.
Okay, so everyone is in the same boat. Acadia, St. FX, everyone is scrambling right now.
Correct. And that brings us to the part of this process that I think is probably causing the most anxiety on campus right now.
The categorization. It feels a bit like the sorting hat at Hogwarts, but with much higher stakes for your actual career.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Every program gets put into one of 4 categories.
And looking at these definitions in the source material, some of them seem fine, and some of them seem, well, let's just say concerning.
Let's walk through them because the nuance is really important here for anyone trying to understand this. These categories dictate the type of change needed for a program.
Okay.
The first one is the easiest. It's called no change.
This keep on keeping on bucket.
Right. The teacher's pet. This is for programs that are new, recently accredited, or clearly working well based on the data.
So they don't need any major intervention.
Exactly. If you are a faculty member and your program lands here, you breathe a huge sigh of relief.
Okay, that makes total sense. Then we move to bucket number 2, which is modernize.
Modernize.
Now, modernize sounds positive. Who doesn't want to be modern? But does this mean they just need to buy some new iPads or what?
It's a bit deeper than that. This category is for programs that require updates to their curriculum, pedagogy.
Pedagogy being the teaching method.
Right, or technology. It's about keeping the program current with the times.
So maybe the field has changed over the last decade and the course material just hasn't kept up.
Exactly. So it's generally a constructive category. It's like remodeling the kitchen. The house is still good, the foundation is solid, but the appliances are from the 80s.
Good analogy. Okay, then we have bucket number 3, revitalize.
Revitalize.
This sounds a bit more urgent, like a plant that's wilting in the corner, or a skin cream. But here I'm guessing it means the program is actually in trouble.
It means the program has specific performance issues. Revitalize is for programs that need updates specifically to enhance enrollment, graduate outcomes, or their relation to the labor market.
Okay, let's pause on that for a second. Enrollment means not enough students are signing up. But graduate outcomes means what exactly? The students aren't getting jobs.
Precisely. Or they aren't getting into grad school, or they simply aren't finding the degree useful in their careers.
Yeah, wow.
It signals a mismatch between what the program offers and what the students or the market actually need.
So it's either we need more students or our students need to get better jobs.
Yeah.
That feels like a really heavy lift for a professor. Suddenly you're not just teaching Shakespeare, you're practically responsible for the LinkedIn profile of your graduates.
It is a massive shift in mindset for sure. It connects the classroom directly to real world results. But then we get to the fourth category,
The scary one.
rationalize.
In the corporate world, rationalization is almost always a euphemism for layoffs or deep cuts.
And the definition provided in the Schedule H documents is quite stark. This bucket applies to programs that, despite efforts to fix them, have low demand, low enrollment, misalignment with priorities, or, and this is the key phrase, unjustifiable cost.
Unjustifiable cost. That is a loaded weapon of a phrase.
It really is.
So if you're a professor and your program lands in the rationalized bucket, you are probably not sleeping well tonight.
It certainly raises immediate questions about the future of those programs, and we should probably mention how these decisions were actually made.
Right. Who is doing the sorting? It wasn't just a random lottery.
No, the initial list and categorization were completed by January 30th.
So this is already done. The sorting has happened.
Yes, and it involved the deans of the faculties using existing institutional data.
So they looked at the numbers, admissions, retention, how long it takes students to graduate, and the deans help sort the programs based on that.
Yes, it wasn't just a computer algorithm, but it was definitely data-driven. But this brings us to the elephant in the room.
The government. Because when you hear phrases like accountability for public funding and unjustifiable cost, the immediate fear for anyone in academia
Is the government telling the university which classes to teach?
Exactly. Is this a provincial takeover of the curriculum?
It is the central tension of Schedule H. And frankly, looking at the FAQs released by the university, they tackle this head on. They ask point blank, isn't Schedule H an overreach by the provincial government?
That is a very direct question for an official FAQ. Usually administrations try to dodge that kind of stuff. What's the university's answer? I assume they didn't say yes.
No, they didn't. Their stance is that they are responding. They acknowledge the province's intent for accountability. It's similar to how they report on grant money usage. They admit that since they take public money, they have to show where it goes.
All right, that makes sense.
But they are drawing a very firm line in the sand regarding how the review is actually conducted.
Right, because I noticed a phrase that kept popping up over and over in the documents. Academic judgment remains central.
That is their shield. The university is insisting that this review does not predecide outcomes and does not replace academic governance.
So they're saying the government set the requirement, but Dalhousie controls the approach, the how.
Exactly. But you can't just ignore the money.
No, you can't. And the FAQs also ask if programs are being viewed just as labor market pipelines.
Right.
Like, are we just trying to crank out workers for local industries, or are we still educating people to be critical thinkers?
That's a huge concern for faculty, especially in the arts and humanities. If a program is expensive but academically brilliant, does it get cut just because it doesn't produce immediate tax-paying workers?
Right.
The university says Schedule H is not a purely financial exercise.
But I feel a big but coming here.
But cost is absolutely an input. They explicitly state that the review looks at program delivery cost and labor market information.
So they are looking at the price tag.
They are. However, they argue it's balanced against academic quality, student learning outcomes, and societal contributions. The goal is what they call a holistic view.
So yes, we look at the price tag, but we also look at the overall value.
That's the argument they are making. They are trying to balance the ledger without losing the soul of the institution.
Okay, so we have the four buckets. We have this underlying tension between the province and the university's autonomy, because we said this is happening right now.
It's a process of integration. Schedule H isn't reinventing the wheel entirely. It's pulling data from those previous cyclical reviews and accreditations we mentioned earlier.
Okay, so looking at past performance.
Right. They look at past recommendations, what improvements were made, and then they add this new layer of data, the costing, the labor market analysis.
And once a program is sorted into a bucket, let's say Revitalize.
Yeah.
What happens next? Do they just snap their fingers and change the syllabus the next day?
Not quite. And this goes back to that academic judgment defense. The units, meaning the individual departments or schools, have to develop action plans.
Action plans.
Yes. They look at the data provided to them and ask, what improvements are needed? How do we implement them? And then, if they actually need to make changes, they have to go through the standard Senate processes.
And if the program really is in the rationalized bucket and it needs to end,
That's suspension or termination.
right.
But all of that flows through the existing academic quality assurance policies.
So it's not the government coming in and locking the door to a classroom.
No. It's the university using the data to make that decision itself through its own democratic process, essentially.
Okay, let's talk timeline. Because there was something in the source material that really caught my eye, and it seemed a little, well, backward.
I think I know exactly what you're referring to.
Okay, so we are in mid-February 2026. The initial lists are done. The categorization is done.
Correct.
The deans have had their say. Programs are in buckets.
Yes.
But the presentation says that the program costing and labor market analysis, the really crunchy financial and economic data, is still in development.
It does say that, yes.
Wait, so they categorized the programs before the final costing data was totally finished?
It appears so.
They put programs in the unjustifiable cost bucket before they finished calculating the actual cost.
It certainly appears that way based on the presentation slides. They used existing institutional data for the initial sort. The deeper, more granular financial methodology is still being worked through.
That seems really bold. If I'm a program director and you tell me my life's work is being rationalized because of costs, and then you tell me, oh, we're still figuring out exactly what you cost, I'm going to have some serious questions.
You would, and many probably do. It suggests the process is highly iterative. They start with the big picture and try to refine the data as they go, but you can imagine the friction that creates on the ground.
Yeah, it feels a bit like building the plane while you're flying it.
Or sentencing the defendant before the trial is over.
Wow, a dramatic way to put it, but the anxiety's got to be real. So what is the next big milestone?
Well, there is a Senate presentation scheduled for later this month, so late February. That will be a key moment to watch.
And the ultimate finish line.
October 2026. That is when the final report goes to the provincial government.
And that report is what unlocks the $6.2 million.
Yes. But notice the specific language the university uses here. They say the report is an opportunity to provide narrative context around their program portfolio.
Narrative context.
Yeah.
That sounds like corporate code for let us explain why this really expensive program is actually important.
Exactly. They want to provide the story behind the numbers. If a program looks terribly expensive on a spreadsheet, but provides massive community value or prestige, the narrative context is where they make that argument to the government.
So the strategy is basically give the government the raw data they asked for, but wrap it in a compelling story that explains why the data doesn't tell the whole picture.
That is the bet they are making. They hope that by providing that context, they can satisfy the accountability requirement without having to gut the institution.
Before we wrap up the process part of this, I have to ask about the students.
Yes, very important.
If you're a student listening to this and you are in a program that gets tagged for rationalize or revitalize, should you be panicking? Are you going to show up at class tomorrow and find the door locked?
The university is very, very clear on this point. The FAQs state that current students are completely protected by existing academic regulations.
Okay, so no sudden evictions from your mate.
No. Even if a program is suspended or terminated, which is obviously the most extreme outcome, universities have what are called teach-out plans.
A teach-out plan. That sounds surprisingly gentle.
It is. It means that if you are currently enrolled in a program, the university guarantees you the ability to finish your degree.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, they might stop accepting new students into the first year, but they will support the current ones through to graduation. The presentation explicitly says students will continue to be supported through existing advising and transition processes.
That is a relief because it's really easy to forget in all this talk of buckets and holdbacks and bilateral agreements that there are actual people sitting in classrooms, taking on debt, trying to get a degree.
It is easy to forget. And that's exactly why the university emphasizes that student learning outcomes are a key part of the review, not just the financial bottom line.
So let's zoom out for a second. We've got the buckets, the money, the tight timeline. What does this all mean in the grand scheme of things?
Well, looking at the big picture, Schedule H is really a massive stress test for the university's autonomy.
How so? Like, who is actually in charge?
Exactly. On one hand, you have the government saying, we provide the public funding, so we need to ensure it's being spent efficiently and creating the workforce the province needs.
Right, that's the accountability argument, which, to be fair, is reasonable. It is public money.
Absolutely. No one argues that public money should be wasted. But on the other hand, you have the university saying, we are an academic institution, not a widget factory.
Right.
We determine what is valuable knowledge, not just the immediate labor market. That's the academic judgment argument.
And Schedule H is basically forcing these two arguments to arm wrestle in real time.
In a way, yes. The university is doing a lot of structural work to keep the steering wheel in its own hands. They are using their own governance, their own definitions of the buckets, and their own narrative context to satisfy the government's requirements.
It's a huge balancing act. They have to show they're cleaning house enough to get the money, but not cleaning house so much that they destroy their own academic mission.
And remember, the result of this isn't just a report that sits on a shelf, it's actual action plans. Modernize. Revitalize.
Right.
This review will likely lead to real changes in what is taught and how it is taught at Dalhousie for the next decade.
You know, it's interesting that they call the scary category rationalize.
Why is that?
Well, to rationalize something in business can mean to make it more efficient, like rationalizing a supply chain.
True.
But in psychology, to rationalize means to make up a logical excuse for something you did wrong.
That is a very sharp observation.
I just wonder which definition is going to apply here in the end.
Well, the definition in the slide is literally unjustifiable cost. So the goal is to eliminate what cannot be justified. But the ultimate question is, justified to whom?
Exactly. Justified to a professor of ancient history?
Yeah.
Or justified to a government auditor looking at a spreadsheet?
That is the crux of the matter. The university believes its narrative context in the October report will bridge that gap. They hope that by explaining the why behind the costs, the government will accept the what.
But there is a huge risk there, isn't there? What if the government says, nice story, but the math still doesn't work for us?
That is the ultimate risk. If Dalhousie submits a report in October that basically says, we reviewed everything and we decided to keep almost everything exactly as is, we just need to modernize a bit.
The government might just say, you didn't cut enough, we're keeping the $6.2 million.
Exactly.
So we have a few very tense months of suspense ahead of us. The data is still being crunched, the action plans are being written by the departments, and the Senate is debating the outcomes.
And $6.2 million is waiting at the finish line in October.
It really is a fascinating moment for higher education. It feels like a pivotal shift from trust us, we're a university, to prove it.
That's a global trend, really. The move toward data-driven governance in higher ed, but seeing it applied so specifically here with a direct financial penalty attached makes Schedule H a very unique case study to watch.
Well, we will certainly be keeping an eye on it to see how this plays out in the fall.
Indeed. It will be very telling to see if the government accepts the context or pushes for the cuts.
And that is the final thought I want to leave you with today. The university says this isn't a cost-cutting exercise, yet rationalize is explicitly defined by unjustifiable cost. When that final report lands on the minister's desk in October to unlock millions of dollars, will the government be satisfied with a good story about modernization?
Or will they expect the university to make the hard choices defined in that fourth bucket?
It raises a fundamental question about who actually runs a public university, the people who teach there or the people who pay the bills. Thanks for listening, everyone.